Good morning. All right. Um, welcome. Yeah, sure. I'll go back. Okay, I'm Sherry Holly. I'm part of the Midvale Pride team and a member of Midvale Community Lutheran Church. And this morning we're going to talk to you about our Pride journey and how we became Reconciling in Christ Church. And this is the third time we've done an adult forum, and I just want to thank everyone who came in presence, like in present and virtual, for being with us today. It's quite the weather morning. I know I dug myself out too to get here with the help of my partner Anna. So again, thanks for being here. We're gonna start today by talking a little bit about pronouns, because that's a lot of I think we've heard a lot of discussion around how do we use pronouns. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about our journey. So um, if you're here with us this morning, or if you are at home, turn to your neighbor and or someone you're seated by and say your name and the pronoun you go by. For me, my name is Sherry. I go by she, her, hers. Um, but we don't usually try to make assumptions about how people, what pronouns people go by based on how we perceive them. So including gender. So that's why sometimes when you go to a meeting nowadays, people will share their pronouns because we want to respect what they use personally. So sometimes you'll go to a meeting and someone will say, Sherry, she, her, hers, or they might say Terry, they, their, them. So that's something that we're just going to take a moment. So turn to your neighbor. If you're just tuning in, we're just doing our pronouns, introducing ourselves to our neighbors. Okay. Okay, great. All right, we're going to continue our pronoun discussion really quick. The reason we do this is because you can't always tell by looking at someone what pronoun they use. It's a issue of respect. If someone takes the time to let you know their name and pronoun, we want to respect that and use it. And it's not up to us to decide someone else's identity. And it's good to practice. I know Anna and I sometimes practice, and you might think that sounds funny, but when you've known someone for their whole, for years, and then they change their pronouns, it takes a while to get used to that. And it could be a coworker or a friend. And if you make a mistake, it's okay to then correct yourself. So if you accidentally mispronounce someone and then you realize it, it's okay to say, oops, sorry, So the words we use to talk to and about a person can show respect, honor, and value. By using the correct pronouns to talk about someone, you show that not only you respect and value that person, but also that you respect the right of all people to be seen, valued, and respected. So as a general rule, it's important to ask what pronoun people use instead of assuming based on how they look. So here's an example for the they, them, their. I saw Lauren come to work today and they seemed really happy. I wonder if it had anything to do with their weekend. I hope to see them soon to hear all about it. So again, you're just throwing in they. All right. So for those of you that are here today, we do have handouts. And I want to thank Laura for putting them together. And I don't know if Laura, you wanted to say anything about that, or do I have to use a microphone? Yes. Okay, we have Laura, if you could introduce yourself to.
I'm Laura Sferin. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I put this together just as something you can take home and read in your own time. I get approached quite often at church, actually, by people who've read or heard something, a new term, and they don't understand it. I think people are very familiar now with gay, lesbian, bisexual terminology. There's something called pansexual, there's asexual. Those are also used quite often. But from my experience, these are the terms that a lot of these terms are the ones that I get asked about the most. So I kind of group them. The first section is about sex, which means at your birth, what you are assigned, usually by somebody else. They never ask you when you come out of mama. The doctor will just take a look at your physical anatomy and write something on your birth certificate. And traditionally, that's how people have then been expected to live their entire life with that label. But gender is different than biological sex. It's different than sex assigned at birth. So I did the next section is about gender and gender identity. I put down the difference between sex and gender. We here talk about the gender binary or gender spectrum. I put that in there. What's really interesting is that if you look at the history of gender and gender roles across the globe, there are many cultures historically, but also today, that have more than just male and female, and they have names for them. And that's really interesting to read about. In some of those cultures, those people that do not fit the binary of male and female are seen as having special blessings and special spiritual power, which I find really interesting. I did put some resources on the final page, an article to read about the history and culture of gender. Many of us here are, I'm on the back page of the front now, are cisgender. People often ask me, how do you say that? Cisgender. And if I would say I'm cis. Somebody might say I'm trans. I'm cis. I'm just going to point out a few things here that I get asked about that I think are important for people to hear. Under transitioning, not all trans people transition, go through any kind of transition. Trans, we usually think of people who go from being assigned male at birth, transitioning to female, or vice versa. But transgender is actually an umbrella term for anyone who feels, anyone whose identity is not strictly male or female. So someone who, that's where the word non-binary comes from. That's gender fluid fits in there. I have a friend who is agender. They use the pronouns she or they, and they don't understand gender at all because they have never had an experience of gender. That's hard for me to understand. That's not my experience, but they don't have any experience of gender and just don't kind of get what the big deal is. A human is a human. But people that do wish to transition in some way to a gender other than what's on their birth certificate, there are kind of three main ways to do that. One is social, by changing name and pronouns. One is physical, by using hormones or having surgery. And then there's legal transitioning, where you go to the court and you go to a judge and you ask to change your name and or gender marker on your birth certificate. Some people only do one of those things. A person might just have top surgery, but keep their birth name. Someone might just keep their name, but never do anything medical or legal. The important thing here is that every person has a right not to share, especially their medical history, with people. And I find that that often is kind of a boundary crossing that happens kind of often. Oh, I'm trans. Oh, did you have surgery? It's like none of your business. So it just accept what they say. You aren't owed the details. I have a little thing about non-binary that might help. Then gender expression. So gender identity is inside how you feel about who you are, about your being. Gender expression is all the outside stuff. What clothes I wear, how I style my hair. Do I have facial hair? Do I wear jewelry? Do I carry a purse? I mean, anything that can be how I walk, how I gesture, how I speak, all of that is exterior. So that's the difference between gender identity and gender expression. There's a section on pronouns, which Sherry's already covered. I find it interesting that I can guarantee every one of us has used they in the singular. And my experience with that is, oh, who was on the phone? What did they want? There was a single person on the phone, presumably, and we've just used they. Knowing which pronouns to use when you meet a new person, it's usually easiest just to start by introducing yourself with your pronouns. I do that with visitors here. Hi, I'm Laura. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Even if they don't want to share their pronouns, I've given them permission to. If they don't, I say, which pronouns would you like me to use? Or how would you like me to refer to you? When our son transitioned from female to male, Mom and Dad made lots of mistakes on pronouns for quite a while. And even after we got pretty good at it, I noticed that if I was tired, I would mispronounce sometimes. I think the big deal there, and I've heard this from trans people, don't make a big to-do about it. Just say, oh, sorry about that. I'll try to do better and move on. Because if you make this big deal about it, it becomes about you and not the person. So just apologize. I'll try to do better and move on with the conversation. There is a little section on sexual orientation there. And then on the very back, I put some additional terms. Queer is a term I get asked about a lot. We have LGBTQIA plus people who are members of Midvale who self-identify as queer. They use that word for themselves. We have people here at Midvale for whom that term is still a slur. They grew up being called that term in a malicious and hateful way. So we can't assume that everybody likes the word queer. Some do, some don't. So what I try to do is never use the word queer for someone unless they have self-identified that way directly to me. Because that shows me, yeah, I claim that term for me. But I do not want to hurt someone by using a term that was used as a weapon against them. I got asked about drag at the ministry fair. Someone asked me about drag. Drag is just a performance. It has nothing to do with sexual identity or gender. A lot of drag performers are straight, cisgender people. So they just love to perform. And historically, okay, think back in Shakespeare's times or before. Who played the female roles? Men. So this idea of performing as a different gender is very old. And drag queens and drag kings today are first and foremost performers. So we can't really make any assumptions about sexuality or gender. And then the last is ally. And my prayer for Midvale is that we are all allies to the LGBTQIA plus community, but we're also allies for like every human being, right? So I think one is trying to understand the concepts and use them correctly, but another is speaking up when somebody makes a comment that is either showing their ignorance or their phobias. So anyway, take this home. I mean, you can keep it as a resource, but I'm always here at church. If you hear a term and you're like, I don't really get this one. Young people today are still creating terms because they find that the existing terms, do you find this, Sherry, you work with young people, are still trying to find words to describe their identity. Because sometimes the words that are currently in usage just don't seem to fit. So I feel that this group of words in terms of language evolution is probably going to keep changing.
Sure.
And maybe more rapidly than, oh, I didn't even hear of that word and that one's already out of vogue.
And Laura, is there a way that if you're listening virtually that you can get a copy of this document?
Yeah, I'll put copies on the desk in the office in front of Pam's desk. So it will always be available. And
do you have an electronic copy? Like, is there a way we could share this electronically?
I mean, this is an electronic file. So, I mean, but then they would have to contact me.
Okay, but I'm just saying you could.
Yeah, I could also just share the file with you.
Just in case somebody isn't able to get here.
And
thank you.
Oh, that's okay. And then the other thing I want to say about this is that this is not at all exhaustive. I put resources on the back. There's 4 different glossaries and they're amazing to read. There are also some videos that you might be interested in looking at. Independent Lens did one on the Two-Spirit people in Indigenous culture. I found an interesting paper that was done as like grad student or senior project about gender through time and culture. I found that really fascinating. And then there's a website on pronouns. So there are people that don't choose he, she, or they come up with new ones. Do you know anybody that uses Z or?
I don't, but like you said, it's always transitioning and, I'm never surprised when somebody goes by something different. Lots of times it's just like their name. I think that's more frequent is that, people who might have gone by one name will decide that really doesn't fit them, their given name, and then they'll transition to another name. And maybe then they decide another, they might want to go by a different name. So I think that I see that more common, but
yeah. And I think John and I have a young friend who got married in May, and she and her partner both identify as female. But our friend presented at the wedding in totally male ways with a tux and a tie and short hair, like Brill creamed back. And in fact, she presents as male everywhere. And she's been asked, so you present as male, do you want me to use he pronouns? She says, no, I'm a woman. I am a woman. I use she. And her parents shared a picture of when she was maybe 5 years old, standing in front of a Christmas tree at their house. And she is wearing little boy pleated trousers, a little button up, and a clip-on necktie. And they remember their daughter saying at that time, that's the real me. So
Well,
They're just be careful with assumptions. It's just a lot more complicated than it used to be. So if you want to engage, you ask about pronouns, and that will help a lot.
thank you so much, Laura. That was awesome. And again, if you have any questions, is there any questions in the chat at all, or no? Anybody here have questions?
Oh, I was just going to add something to,
Sure.
so one, I did paste most of the contents of the handout into the chat.
Thank you.
So it won't be easy to read, but they can kind of look through it as they want to. But the comment I was going to say to Laura is, I think people hesitate to ask people their pronouns because you think it might be intrusive. And I don't know, I have had a conversation where somebody's like, it's actually not, that if somebody asks you your pronouns, it's a pretty easy question to answer. It shouldn't feel offensive. And so just to maybe encourage people to do that. If you have questions.
I have one other comment. How many of you seen the movie Avatar? The first one, or either of them, the first one. So how do those people say, I love you? They don't say, I love you. They say something else. Does anybody know what they say? I see you. And when Levi came out, that really struck me, that he wanted to be seen for who he was. And to say, I see you, meant I love you. And I think when you ask somebody their pronouns, you're asking to see them. And by them sharing their pronouns with you, they want to be seen. And so it's a way of saying, I love you. I see you.
Thank
I
you.
see you who you really are.
That's awesome. Okay, so we are gonna move on to a video that is that was made by the Senate. This is Midvale Lutheran Church Reconciling in Christ Story. And just know there are some parts that are a little somber, but I think now that we've all gotten to know each other a little bit better through our pronouns. Yay. No. Now I gotta go back to figure out how I can go back to our video with there we go. Thank you. Yay. Oh. Okay. Slideshow, where are we going? Oh no. It's working on my computer, but not. Yeah, so it's on just it's on my screen, but not this one. So thanks for your patience as we work through our technical difficulty. There, yeah.
We can see those on the Zoom call on the screen now, so welcome.
And by the way, it's nice to see so many Pride t-shirts in the forum today. I forgot to wear mine, but it was kind of cold and I was like, all right. So this we're just going to talk a little bit more about some of the things we've done as a Pride committee. The video covered a few things, but just to share this, we have had 3 adult forums, and the first one was kind of like a LGBTQ plus 101. The second one we had was some guest speakers that were trans, and now this one is just kind of talking about our journey and pronouns. So thank you for all of you who've come and been a part of it. We have tried to also do some, oh no, it's not moving forward for me. There we go. Sometimes providing snacks and stuff during this time, but it does get to be a lot. And so if anybody is interested in joining us in this journey, it's always good to have more people. We do have some new flyers, and it's exciting because a lot of the things we've done through the help of people within the Midvale Community Church. It's been great to have resources right within the congregation. But this is a flyer that has on one side the welcoming statement. And we also changed our logo a little bit so that it showed the commitment to racial justice and equality. So I think they're really pretty. Jolyn Rorda is a person's name from the congregation that designed this. So thank you, Jolyn. Again, we used our tapped into the talents of our congregation for our t-shirts, and they're building community and awareness by wearing them around, not only at church, but when you go to the gym or wherever you're out and about too. And each year our hope is to continue with it and have a new design and a new saying. So right now, I'm your fan, love God is out there. But we also had what did our first one say? Oh, all are welcome. All are welcome. And
That's the old one.
yes, the first one was all are welcome. Okay. So it's been fun to have people come up with ideas and design them.
We've got graphic design that was designed by Jolyn and printed by a Midvale member, Jim Porter.
So Jolyn, thank you again, and Joe Porter. Yay. So another thing is that the signage for a while, we didn't have it needed to be, our big sign out front needed to be updated, and so it's great that it was able to be updated. And then instead of putting a sticker on there with the Pride logo, it's actually just a permanent part of the sign, so that's really nice. And I did take this picture while I was at the stop sign. So you can kind of see it, but it obviously was not a professional photo, but but it was, when you're at the stop sign, that's what you can see. So that's pretty nice. So this is just some more information about the Magic Pride Festival booth, and we also have sponsored it in the past, and you can see the they did rock painting this year, and that was a big draw. People come by, they could paint messages on rocks. And I think it was pretty successful in getting a lot of people to stop by and talk. We did last year sponsor it, and so we have our logo on there. And then just, you know, it's been a positive thing to do in the community. We have Laura's going to add, because Laura was very involved in that.
Yep. Okay. So this booth, we participate with other RIC churches in our synod. So Midville does not have its own booth, although we could if we wanted. But I'm on the synod RIC team, and we decided that it's not a competition. So we just hope that someone at Pride Fest who might be open to looking for a spiritual home would consider one of the RIC churches in our ELCA synod. So I headed up the rock painting project. I bought 100 rocks. They were gone in a couple hours. So next year it'll be probably 250 rocks. We also had rainbow Mardi Gras beads. We handed out 2,000. Next year will probably be
Mardi Gras.
Mardi
beads.
Gras beads. There's that might be on the next. But I mean, reaching out to people as they came by our booth, we had clergy in our booth wearing their stoles. And just reaching out to people, and even adults like to paint rocks. It's kind of like, come on, come paint a rock. And they'd go, okay. And they'd come in, and there was lots of nice individual conversations that happened over the rock painting table.
Thank you. So then we've done some social outings, and one thing that's been fun that we really want to make an annual event is to go to the Mallards game. And you know, we did open it up to the whole congregation, so that, you know, if you don't have to be part of the Pride team, we got a really good deal on tickets, we got hats, and there was even fireworks. It was a pretty fun night.
I think don't they call it Pride Night at the Mallards?
Yep, it is. And that's I think was it in June? Yeah. And so, you know, hoping we get more people for that this year. I think again there's another picture of our booth at the Pride festival, and you can see the Mardi Gras beads are being handed out. And then we also have someone that's part of Perfect Harmony in our Pride team, and it's always fun to be able to support people and go to some of their functions, and as they share their talents with the community. So this is a picture of Perfect Harmony. So just again, kind of, you know, we have done some things with our actual services. The Pride team has been a part of singing. We've had lectors. We've been part of the hospitality, and the services have tried to focus on inclusive language, and that was for RIC Sunday and Pride months. So just it is a welcoming thing to come to a service and feel included, because oftentimes, as mentioned in the video, people have not felt included or wanted or welcomed. So what's next? We did just have the ministry fair, and I think we've had a couple of people show interest, and they're even here today, so yay. And you know, I would just say that this is a pretty this group isn't focused on doing a lot of work. It's more, you know, just being part and having presence in the community, both in the congregation and in Madison. adult forums, the social events. We've talked about potentially doing a book study, and maybe it'd be nice to have a quilt made, or be a part that there's also a quilt auction that GSA for Safe School has. We thought about maybe just buying one with some of our funds. And potentially we might get a new banner. So those are just some of the things. And you can see Laura did this great display at the ministry fair in that picture there. So that might be it. I hope that everyone has, yeah, we have a hand up and 2 questions. We'll start in the
So I'm looking at the sheet Laura handed out, and no, LGBTQ, fine, but what's RIA and plus? These things keep changing, and I haven't kept up with that.
Well, to be honest, we have LGBTQ, I, is that for intersex, asexual, plus then just kind of, is everything. Asexual people who just really, aren't, they're not sexual. Yeah, they're not interested. Don't care. Exactly. And then we just do the plus because it's hard to keep up. Okay, just a second, Laura. We just have one, and then okay, and then we'll come back to Laura.
I have a question about, it helps me to hear this, and then it helps me to think about my expectations. And there's a part of me that hopes that this is a process that more and more congregations are coming to and things like that. But then there's a part of me that's a little cynical and thinks, well, maybe we'll get more people thinking about this and it will then hit a wall and there'll be backlash with people getting energized to work against this or say this is bad things. I wonder, in our synod, for example, do we think that more congregations are becoming reconciling in Christ congregations, or have we gotten the ones that are likely to do that to do it, and now we just are gonna hold in this way? Do you understand the question?
I really like that question, and it makes me want to dig into the data a little bit. So maybe that's something we can share out. But I and Laura might know, my feeling is that we keep getting more and more. I know when I'm driving through small town Wisconsin, I am always pleasantly surprised to see a Reconciling in Christ Church logo.
Great example.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. Mazomani, I was like, oh, hey, yay. Yeah. So
I saw Bethel up there as a name. I thought, okay, Bethel,
yeah.
Midvale.
Yeah, there are several actually, and you can see all around this area, but even across the state. And then, I will look at the data, and maybe we can find a way to share that out, a little article or something.
Yeah,
So
the
stay
next
tuned.
time we're together, we can compare and say,
Yeah,
where are we now? Yeah.
yeah, that would be great. Laura.
Oh,
Oh,
okay, I'll
yeah.
give it to Gary. Okay, so I'm going to address both David's question. So the Q in LGBTQ, some people claim that as queer, but the people that don't identify as queer and find that a hurtful term say that Q stands for questioning, for people who are trying to figure out more about who they are. So to say that that's represents queer we just should be cautious about that. Okay, so if you go to the website, and I should have put this on here, reconcilingworks.org, they have a map. You can go to a map and find a church that's RIC. And you can click on individual ones. And so the Madison area has a big cluster. You can also sign up so that you get, I signed up on Facebook with them. So every time a new church becomes RIC, it shows up in my Facebook feed. And there are still churches becoming RIC. It's growing. I mean, I think there was like the early adopters, right? And then more and more. On the Synod RIC team, we've talked about this because as far as I can tell, Midvale is the only area congregation that has a Pride team. And so when I talk about it, then all these pastors like, well, how do you start a Pride team? We need to know, how did you start a Pride team? And so maybe that's something that we need to present more. There are also pastors who say, well, I and some of our leadership are ready to become RIC, but the rest of our congregation is just not there yet. And so they talk a lot about baby steps. We're not RIC yet, but we're doing what we can to move closer in that direction. I know a pastor who's actually gay himself, a pastor at a congregation, and his congregation is not RIC. And he said, we're not ready yet, but yet I'm their pastor. So, so there's a lot of talk about baby steps, but yeah, it continues to grow. And, you know, other denominations have their own kind of, I think in Presbyterian or Methodist, they have a thing called open and affirming congregations. So, and I'm sure UCC does and Episcopal does. Those would be probably the 4 denominations that are kind of ahead in this, but
about you not using Mike and not using myself, right? At least the First Baptist Church, the one near University Crossing, I know they at least have, I don't know if it's Reconciling in Christ, but it is something. I think they're American Baptist. So I mean, there are a lot of different Baptist groups. So keep that in mind. Right. I didn't know that, but I do know I've seen this sticker on their door. So
Okay, one more question here.
I-
Okay, yay.
I was just going to say the picture of Perfect Harmony was on the screen there, and they had their 25th anniversary this year that many of us were a part of. 20-some years ago, I sang in Perfect Harmony, and the chorus was designed to be not just gay men, but also those who were allies or friends. And it's interesting, this year, my son, David, became the director of Our Voice Milwaukee, which is their gay chorus and their allies. And it's an interesting journey because they also in June of this year, he and his husband were married. So we have a lot of interest in that as a part of our family and in our history.
That's beautiful.
That's really neat, Gary. I wanted to comment on the things that have been said. And I think that, you know, when you say the denominations that are affirming and you say, for example, Episcopal, Presbyterian, UCC, I think that denominations become known as being open and affirming themselves. And I think the ELCA has made great strides in becoming a part of that grouping of denominations in the United States. I also think denominations are becoming less of a definition of a congregation, which is probably an okay thing to some degree. But I'm really proud of the ELCA and the steps that they've taken. I also think that if I do endorse Midvale's Pride Team, and I'm interested to know that it's kind of a unique thing. But it is, I think you could just substitute the title Super Fun Committee because it's such a wonderful group of people to be with. And so I would give that endorsement to the Pride Team here at Midvale, and that Midvale being a Reconciling Christ congregation has been such a blessing to us. I mean, it's been an enhancement of who we have always wanted to be. And I think also it underscores the truth of who Jesus is calling us to be. So that's just a part of who Jesus wants the church to be. And so this group's leadership is tremendously valued and lifted up, and thanks for everything that this group has done to make us more.
Oh, thank you.
I thought I read somewhere before this Sunday, I don't know if it was in Midvale Moments, how many Lutheran churches in the country today are celebrating RIC Sunday. I'm amazed, but I just can't remember what the number was. Does anybody know?
And how about the fact that our RIC celebration worship weekend was the same weekend as the Bucks
Yeah.
celebration of LGBTQ?
Sherry, I wonder if you might talk about GSafe just a little bit for people who aren't familiar with their work. And then I will add to that my son and I did their 5K walk, which is around Halloween. It's like a trick or trot or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's a super fun group too. So
GSA for Safe Schools is an organization that is it promotes safe spaces in schools, in public schools. And it's usually middle school and high schools, mainly high schools, and it's a student organization run by a teacher usually, and it's kind of like this, it's kind of like their own little pride team for schools. I will say, speaking to an earlier point, that there's been some attack of some of those safe spaces, and there's been some schools that, well, what they would do lots of times, they'd have stickers that this is a safe place, and you could put it up in a classroom, because many youth that are questioning that cue, right? They're not sure. Some are, they're in transitions of trying to figure it out, and so knowing that there's a safe place to be is a very respectful thing to do and safe thing to do. But and also using pronouns with your email addresses. But some school boards who are a little bit more conservative, or have that kind of agenda, have not allowed school districts to be able to continue to put those stickers up, or to use pronouns in their signature blocks. And so I work at the Department of Public Instruction, and we are we have someone now just specifically temporarily assigned to try to help schools and and deal with this kind of attack and for students, because you can imagine, if you're a student and you're not feeling welcomed in your school, all of a sudden this becomes like a headline. You're just wanting to shrivel up and like, oh, please, like. So anyways, that's something that is going on. But GSA for Safe Schools is a organization in Wisconsin. It's part of a national umbrella organization, and they do a lot of great fundraising and supporting schools. They'll go to school boards to try to help change their some of their mission statements, and so they do. I'm sure that you could speak about it too. But
Oh, no, Levi didn't do anything with
yeah.
GSA in school. But I want to hold up what GSafe does and how important it is in schools. I don't know if any of you read, it was in the paper recently about a middle school kid in Verona who identified as non-binary, who died by suicide earlier this month. Kids need safe spaces to be themselves. Life is already hard enough when you're a teenager. And to add that kind of I think this kid was probably bullied a lot, but they need safe spaces, and GSafe is one of the big ones. So they do great work.
Yeah, and I used to be a GSA advisor when I worked at Verona High School, actually. And I had a student that also took his life by suicide because his family they were very religious in that particular religion. I won't call it out, did not accept him. He was kicked out of his house and he was homeless and in a terrible situation. So, I mean, speaking to the video, I don't like to, dwell on that, but it is a real part of, you know, life. Yeah. Yeah. Navigating, can be very difficult. So again, very grateful for Midville, and this welcoming environment and, yeah. All right. Well, I don't think I have anything else. Is last call for questions. Any questions in the chat? If anybody's out there, could you check any comments? Really appreciate all of you braving the weather that today and joining us. It's important work and it's hard to know what to say or do in this work. And so thank you so much.
Thanks again, Sherry. That was great. Next week is February 5th already, and it's the congregational meeting preview that the council will share. What's going to happen 2 weeks from now at the congregational meeting. So that's usually a good discussion. See you then.